individually in a moment. And so that brings me also to say to Susie, a big welcome and thank you for emceeing tonight's event. But first, let's pray. Ka inoi tātou. E te atua, te kai hanga o te ao, te kai aroha o ngā mea katoa. E arohaina mātou e koe, e hia ana koe ki a mātou, kia tiaki tētahi ki tētahi. Kua tae mai mātou i tēnei pō, ki te whakarongo, me te urupare ki te wero, ki te tiaki tētahi ki tētahi, me tō tātou ao. Manakitia tō tātou huihuinga i tēnei pō. Me homai ki a mātou te maia ki te whakarongo pai, me te tuku ai mātou ki te kawe i tika me te aroha, ki ngā mea katoa kei a tātou. Holy God, creator of the world, lover of all things, you love us and long for us to care for one another. We come tonight to listen and to respond to the challenge to care for each other and for our world. Bless our gathering tonight and give us courage to listen deeply and commit ourselves to bringing justice and aroha to all that we are a part of. Amen. Susie. Kei a koe.
Kia ora, thank you. Kia ora. A very warm welcome to all of you to the Enough for All Election 2020 Political Forum. Ko Susie Ferguson tōku ingoa. And on behalf of the organising groups, including Action Station, Tick for Kids, Anglican Movement, the Equality Network and Child Poverty Action Group, I would like to welcome all of you who are here tonight and all of you who are tuning in from across the country to this event. There are 5 weeks to go until the election. Yes, it could have been on Saturday, but no, 5 weeks to go. It is the time then to research which political party will best represent your concerns and your hopes for the future of Aotearoa, New Zealand. This event is aiming to find out which of those political parties are willing to commit to evidence-based changes needed to put us on track towards the future, and a future where every child has the opportunity to thrive and where every adult can access decent income and housing. Answering the questions tonight are several politicians. It's my pleasure to introduce them. I'm going to try and do it so that it makes sense as you're looking at us. So, up there, hopefully, is the Green Party representative. Anytime. I don't know. Can you hear us, Ricardo? Can you give us a wave?
Fine. Kia ora. I don't know if I'm showing up.
There he is, Ricardo Menendez-March, the Green Party candidate for Maunga Kia Kia, number 10 on the Green Party list at this election. He is joining us by Zoom. And there he is. Next to me is Nicola Willis here from National spokesperson for education and early childhood education. She's been in Parliament since April 2018. Next along is Taylor Arneil from New Zealand First, the New Zealand First candidate for Rongotai, kia ora. And then we go to Andrew Little from Labour. He's been in Parliament since 2011 and is the current Minister for, deep breath, Justice, Court, Treaty of Waitangi negotiations, and the Minister responsible for the Pike River re-entry, New Zealand Security Intelligence Services and the Government Communications Security Bureau. No biggie. And from top at the end, Jeff Simmons, the party leader and the top candidate for Rongotai. We should mention at the stage that ACT and the Māori Party were both invited, but were unable to send anyone along tonight. So, now we get to go to the questions. This is the fun bit. So a reminder to the politicians. These are yes and no questions for the first sentence. Once you answer yes or no into the microphone, you get a minute to explain your answer. So that's 100% different to what I just advised you, Jeff. There is a bell. So if you go over your minute, ding, you'll know your minute is up, you need to wrap up, and I'm going to be strict with you because the organisations who put this together have asked me to do so. and it's one of my favorite things. Because we're tight on time, also because we hear a lot of nice platitudes and speeches and no commitments. So short, to the point, 1 minute. At the end of the event, you're also going to get 2 minutes to set out other policies your party is proposing that would ensure a fair and equitable Aotearoa. So let's kick off the proceedings. You will perhaps be wondering if you can see the pavlova on the table, what that is all about. And Leilani Nauthahu is going to tell us what that's all about. Leilani, the stage is yours. Kia ora. A warm welcome to you and your pavlova.
Hi, everyone. Can I ask you guys to come stand around me, please? Oh, yes. So, hi, everyone. I'm Leilani. Money is something young people just hope their mums and dads have enough of. But not everyone's mums and dads have the same amount. That's wealth inequality. Imagine if this pavlova is all of New Zealand's money. What's in everyone's wallets and bank accounts and credit cards? And if everyone sold their cars and houses and computers, and we mix that into one delicious pav. So shall we slice this pavlova up and serve it to New Zealand's population? Let's leave on this plate what the richest half of our population owns. On this plate, we serve up what there is left for the poorest half. I wonder if the candidates know how much of New Zealand's wealth is owned by New Zealand's poorest 2.5 million. The poorest half of our population owns just 2% of the pavlova, which is not coming out. There we go. This is a mess. Let's split the richest half wealths into 2 more plates. The richest 10% of all New Zealanders, about 50,000 Kiwis, keep eating on this plate. And the other 40% of our population, about 2 million Kiwis, on this one. Shall we give that 40% their slice of the pav? I wonder if the candidates know how much of this pavlova this proportion of our population owns.
Any guesses? Interesting. What are the rest? No answer?
True. Good answer.
Let's take a look at how big the slice is.
Wow.
Ooh.
I wash my hands, guys.
How much is that?
After sharing it between these groups, we can see that the richest 10% of New Zealand's population owns over half, 59% of all New Zealand's wealth. So yes, you were right. This is 40%-ish. Now, let's split that richest 10% into 2 more groups. This plate is for New Zealand's richest 1% of people, 38,000 people. And this one is for the other 9% of rich people. Can you guess how big the slice is?
Any guesses?
The richest 1% of New Zealand owns this big chunk, 20% of the pavlova. On average, they own around $6.2 million each. And this group of Kiwis, this one, 90% of the population don't even own half. Shouldn't we distribute the wealth in New Zealand so that everyone's given a fair piece of the pav? My question more formally to the candidates, given this shocking wealth inequality, does your political party support making sure New Zealand's wealthiest individuals start contributing more For example, through a wealth tax. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Okay, so Nicola, I will start with you. So it's a yes or no, and then explain your answer. Do you just want to recap your question? Is that possible? Or is your paper over there? Your paper's over there, isn't it? Let's get your paper to make sure we get the answers, eh? There you go.
Okay.
Okay, so quick recap on the question and then yes or no in 1 minute.
Does your political party support making sure New Zealand's wealthiest individuals start contributing more, for example, through a wealth tax?
No, but that doesn't mean that we think people shouldn't pay their fair share. To use that pie analogy, right now, the top 5% of taxpayers in New Zealand pay 31%, a third of that cake, of all tax paid. And in fact, the top 3% pay 24% of tax in New Zealand. New Zealand has a progressive tax system in which those on higher incomes pay more tax and in which incomes on assets attract tax. We are in a recession. The biggest challenge for us in terms of people living in poverty is unemployment. 100,000 New Zealanders are set to lose their jobs over the next 2 years, according to Treasury estimates. That is tens of thousands of people who will be living in far worse material circumstances. Our focus needs to be on providing jobs for those people, growing our economy and getting out of a recession. That's the best thing we can do to make more New Zealanders wealthier.
Oh, and under a minute because we did bell. Thank you very much, Nicola Willis. Just hold that thought because I'm going to go up to the Green Party, Ricardo, because I realise I was remiss in perhaps starting with you because you are first in the line in some ways. Ricardo, are you able to come in and with a yes or no and then 1 minute to answer the question?
Kia ora, can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Awesome. So it's a yes, and a big yes. The Green Party will introduce a new tax on net assets that applies to the top 6% of the wealthiest people in Aotearoa. And so those who have own wealth more than $1 million will pay 1% of net assets worth over that, and 2% for those who have assets worth over $2 million. We would also introduce two new top income tax bands, which would tax people on rich incomes. And additionally, this is not just about economic justice, it's also about alleviating poverty. And the Green Party also supports a tax-free bracket for people first 10 grand of their income. So this is about redistributing wealth and ensuring that we're not only making our tax system more progressive, that we are alleviating some of the hardship and the tax burden in our low-income communities.
Hey team, it just looks like the St. Peter's internet has gone down. I'll just let them know, but I'm sure.
Oh, good.
They can enforce our tax laws and crack down on two groups of people, namely the people who are multinationals who do not pay tax, they actively avoid it. Two, the people who are already avoiding tax, even though they can afford to pay it. By properly resourcing and ensuring that IRD enforces our tax laws, we can ensure that our current tax policy is efficient and tax evasion is zero.
Thank you very much. That's Taylor O'Neill from New Zealand First. I think, and I hope, and fingers crossed, we're able to go back to Ricardo. Unfortunately, you were just about to start and then you were cut off in your prime, Ricardo.
Oh, all good. Can you hear me okay now?
We can hear you now, we can see you now, and would you like to give us your yes or no answer and then 1 minute of reasoning, please?
For sure. I feel like this is going to be a double up for the people on Zoom. So it's a yes. And to expand on that, the Green Party plans on introducing a new tax on wealth, which would target the 6% wealthiest people in Aotearoa. So there's a 1% tax on assets over $1 million and a 2% tax on net assets worth over $2 million. We would also introduce two new tax brackets for high-income earners. This is not just about the wealthy people paying their fair share. It's actually about making our taxation more progressive, which is why the Green Party also supports making the first 10 grand that somebody earns on an income tax-free as a tax-free bracket. And this would ensure that we're not only taxing the wealthy elite what we should be taxing them, but that we alleviate what is actually a really heavy tax burden on low-income communities. And for the Green Party, this is about bringing about bold economic justice. And it's clear to us that only a party vote for the Green on a Labour Green government will ensure progressive taxation reform.
Oh, that's the bell. First bell of the night goes to the Greens. Taylor, I'm going to have to come back to you because the joys of technology and internet going up and down is that the Zoom audience did not hear your answer. So you get to do it again.
Okay. No, but that does not. Well, that does not mean that we do not support people paying their fair share to our society. At this point in time, we do not need to be undertaking something that we have never tried before, such as a wealth tax. What we need to do is we need to properly resource the IRD so they can enforce our current tax policies efficiently. This means because this will lead to them being able to crack down on multinationals who actively avoid tax, people who already earn a lot of money but avoid tax anyhow, even though they can pay their taxes. If we resource the IRD properly, they will be able to enforce our tax policy, and that will lead to tax evasion reaching zero.
Fabulous. Thank you for doing that for the Zoom audience. Now, Andrew Little of Labour, yes or no? And see if you can get a bell or not.
Yes, and that's why our policy is to increase the top marginal rate of tax for the top 2% of earners, so those earning above $180,000 a year. The reality is that incomes in New Zealand have become quite disparate, and it is right in a country where we have growing levels of poverty for some folks, low wages for some folks, and the level of social wage that is required to sustain many households needs to be funded. And it is right that those who are on the highest incomes, those who are the wealthiest, contribute to those who are on the lowest incomes. We do have a long journey to go to introduce greater equality, less inequality in New Zealand, both in terms of incomes and in terms of the distribution of the nation's wealth. This is an important start.
Thank you very much. That's Andrew Little of Labour. And Jeff Simmons from TOP.
Yes to the question. And the devil's in the detail on this stuff. The incomes are taxed at, people who pay income tax do pay their fair share of tax. But half of our wealthiest individuals don't even pay the top rate of income tax. So if you put up income taxes, you're not going to touch those wealthy individuals. So we do need a wealth tax. But again, some forms of wealth pay more tax than others. Our businesses pay the highest tax, some of the highest tax rates in the world. Property pays the lowest tax in the OECD. And it's that difference that's driving speculation in our property market. So we need to make sure we tax property like we tax other assets. If we put a blanket wealth tax on everything, that will kill the incentive to invest in businesses which actually create jobs and make us wealthier over time. So it's important to tax property so that we drive investment into businesses that actually create exports and jobs and increase our incomes.
Thank you very much. Hang on to the mic for me, if you would do, Jeff. Thank you. Do you think you got answers to your questions?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you for your pavlova as well.
We also need to grow the pavlova.
Yeah. More PAV is not a bad thing. I don't think people would disagree with that. Now, Stacey Ryan, if I could welcome you up next.
Kia ora, my name is Stacey Ryan. For the last 8 years, I've suffered from a chronic health condition, which has meant I've had to rely on the government for support. Like many people who have no choice but to ask the government for help because of illness or disability, I often struggle on the small amount of income that I'm able to get. Even though it's been so long, I am constantly forced to jump through hoops to prove that I'm still sick by providing a medical certificate at my own expense every 3 months. I also struggle with the isolation that comes with being sick all the time. I made heaps of great friends at my last job before I was forced to quit because of my health conditions. I miss all of them, yes, even the customers. Add that to the isolation that comes from having so little income, and my mental health also suffers. When the COVID-19 special payments were introduced earlier this year at double the rate of a job seeker's benefit, it demonstrated that people in government know that the current benefit rate is too low. I believe no matter why someone comes to need support, whether it's because of illness, disability, a relationship breakup, bereavement, or losing their job before or because of COVID-19, everyone deserves decent support. So my question to the candidates is, do you agree that the current benefit rates are too low? And does your party promise to increase core benefit rates so that people like myself, who are forced to rely on you to survive, are not only able to pay our rents, but are also able to take part in our communities?
Oh, no. But I do think that our welfare system needs a big overhaul because it is currently stigmatizing and bureaucratic. What top favors is a universal basic income, so paying everyone $250 a week, no questions asked. The big advantage of that is it eliminates bureaucracy and it eliminates stigma from the welfare system. And it means that people are rewarded for effort. So when people are retraining, when people are starting a business, when people are caring for members of their community or for their children, then they are rewarded for that effort. That people aren't punished for who they live with. All that sort of stuff would be eliminated from the benefit system with a universal basic income. So it would be a lot simpler, fairer, and a modern welfare system, which is important because in this modern gig economy with artificial intelligence and automation destroying jobs, more people are going to come in contact with the welfare system. They'll be moving in and out of work.
Enough. Thank you very much, Jeff Simmons. We're just getting into your stride there from top. Andrew Little from Labour is next.
Yes, and that's why under this government a number of things have happened. We've indexed benefit levels to average wage growth as opposed to inflation, which has seen benefit levels starting to grow at a more rapid rate. We increased them by $25 a week for the core benefits, just as COVID arrived. And we introduced the winter energy payment, in fact doubled it for this particular winter because of COVID-19. Is there more to do? There is way more to do, and the Welfare Expert Advisory Group that completed their report at the end of last year came up with a large number of recommendations. We are working our way through that, and we were somewhat derailed by COVID-19 in terms of implementing more of those recommendations. They remain front and centre of the work that the Labour Party wants to see done on benefit levels.
Thank you very much, Andrew Little. Next is New Zealand First's Taylor Arneil.
Yes, and under this government we accepted the increase to core benefits. However, New Zealand's first philosophy is that we need to increase the number of work opportunities and initiatives for people to become independent from the welfare state. The welfare state needs to be an umbrella that meets the needs of people when they need them, and the government, we have a duty to respond to that need and to help people. However, once people are on the welfare state, we need to fund them, we need to help them become independent from the welfare state through work initiatives. However, in saying all of that as well, we do need to properly support people who are unable to work because of health issues.
Thank you very much, Taylor.
Nicola Willis of National.
Yes, we support annual benefit adjustments to ensure they keep up with the cost of living, but no, we don't support further increases to core benefits.
I've got to press you on that. It's a yes or a no, not a yes and no.
No. But what we did do in government was, for the first time in 40 years, in 2015, we did increase core benefits. And we think that right now is not the time to be making further increases to benefits, with that pavlova, if it were the economy, set to shrink by 16%. Our resolute focus has to be on supporting people into work, and that includes people like yourself, making sure that we work more closely with employers to make work an option. Our belief is that work gives not only income, but dignity, and that people should be supported to work wherever they can. We also believe that ensuring that work pays is very important, and that welfare systems should encourage that. We don't support a two-tier benefit system.
Thank you very much. If you just hang on to the microphone, I'm going to hopefully... Oh, I can see myself. That's disconcerting.
You can see
hopefully Ricardo is with us.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Ricardo.
Awesome.
I'm just going to wait for you to be all big on the screen so that I'm not looking at my back, which is quite odd.
All good. I think I just...
Oh, look, there you are. Brilliant. Ricardo, I should make sure I get your name correct as well. Ricardo Menendez-March, Green Party. Yes or no?
Yes, and this is because people's right to a life with dignity has nothing to do with their employment status. People on the benefit make incredible contributions to our society, whether it's through caregiving, community work, or the volunteer work they do in their communities. And the Green Party is committed to introducing a guaranteed minimum income that would remove all sanctions and obligations, would also increase the sort of lowest end of the benefit bracket to $325 a week with additional supplements, and would reform ACC to an agency of comprehensive care. I think this is an incredibly important step. And what I'm really surprised is to hear that the Labour Party is answering yes, because just recently we had Carmel Sapoloni saying there were no immediate commitments for further benefit increases as far as the Labour Party is concerned. What is clear to me is that if we're going to have that overhaul of the welfare system that the Welfare Expert Advisory Group told us we needed, we need the Green Party at the table and the next government to ensure a welfare system based on support, not punishment.
Do you feel your question was answered? Do you want to ask any follow-ups? I'm going to ask a follow-up.
I do have one quick follow-up.
Yeah.
So for a person like me who spends every day in constant chronic pain, would you force someone into a job, or would you allow them either a universal benefit income, sorry, I can't remember the exact term, or would you let me go on living as I'm living and, you know, just be allowed to be a part of society?
Going to go to Ricardo first on that one. It's just a yes or no.
Well, I mean, I would say, I guess it's no wouldn't force you into work, because we were committed to removing the punitive work obligations and sanctions and the hurdles that people living with health conditions and disabilities have to go through to access dignified income support.
Okay. Nicola?
No, we wouldn't force those who are too sick to work. We believe in a strong social safety net that supports those who can't work.
Taylor, New Zealand First.
No, we wouldn't force you into work if you are unable to work, and we will ensure that you are properly supported.
Andrew of Labour?
No, we wouldn't force you into work, and the rules around, for example, providing medical certificates for chronic conditions is ridiculous, and it's those sorts of conditions that need to change.
And Jeff from Top.
No, wouldn't force you into work, and we certainly see there will be a need for the UBI to be topped up for certain groups that cannot work.
Thank you.
You've all been very informative. Thank you very much.
Kia ora. Thank you very much. Stacey Ryan, thank you very much, Stacey. Now, Jeff's got the microphone now. That's good, as long as we know where it is. I think next on stage is Alison Brooks with some whānau support. Kia ora, welcome.
Tēnā koutou e hui mai nei mō tēnei kaupapa whakahirahira. Ko taranaki te maunga, ko wainga ngoro te awa, ko Aotea te waka, ko ngā ruahine rangi rawa, ko ngā ti ruanui, te Aotearoa, all around Maunga Taranaki, ōku iwi. Ko Alison ui ana Brooks, tōku ingoa. Kia ora. Whakapapa is core to te ao Māori, and the centrality of relationships is at the heart of tikanga. Being able to rely on and support one another, with my sisters here, in our hard times and good times is what helps get us through. Being able to help nourish and care for our children, tamariki, and each other is what builds a strong future for all of us. The Ministry of Social Development currently financially punishes people for being in relationships by drastically cutting the income support they can receive. In some cases, to income so low, many relationships are forced to separate in order to try and manage the needs of ourselves and, in many cases, our children. The two criteria MSD uses to assess if people are in a relationship in the nature of marriage, which in itself is a really antiquated term, are emotional support and financial interdependence. For Māori, tangata whenua, whakawhanaungatanga involves rallying together when needed to help each other out. It means we provide emotional, psychological, physical, and financial support when we can to our friends and whānau, and also to our partners or romantic partners. But that does not mean we are in relationships in the nature of marriage. It means whakawhanaungatanga. The way MSD treats relationships punishes us for practicing our cultural values, including whanaungatanga, which means it is inconsistent with the Crown's ongoing obligations found in Te Tiriti o Waitangi of working in partnership with Māori to actively protect Māori cultural interests and providing for equitable opportunities, resources, and outcomes. These relationship rules are particularly harmful for single parents, more specifically single mothers, and more pointedly, single Māori mothers. These relationship rules are sorry, I've just said that, but it's true. I know this because when I was and I still am a full-time student, but when I was one, MSD deemed me to be in a relationship. They reduced my accommodation supplement on the assumption that I would be interdependent with my partner. This was an erroneous presumption that only made it harder for me to care for my personal responsibilities, take care of my personal responsibilities and obligations as a mother. I'm a mother of 4. I was actually a high school dropout. I was a teenage mother. I have 4 children who are adults now and 2 mokopuna. I am a full-time student who is doing law and science, double majoring in psychology and criminology. So I'm getting myself educated, but it's been a hard road, especially when I became a single parent in my 30s and a full-time worker at that time. So not only did it make it harder for me to take care of my personal responsibilities and obligations as a mother and student, it put huge amounts of added financial and relationship pressures on us. We should not be having to be forced by an abusive system to determine our agency and relationship status. This system currently is structurally violent to the most vulnerable members of our society. I am really fortunate to be here to have this platform, to be able to speak for those who have been kept in this system I know I'm getting out. As it stands, the relationship rules are pushing people into isolation, further stress, and the other negative mental health outcomes that come with it. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Tūtira mai ngā
Iwi,
Owen.
tātou e. Tūtira mai ngā iwi, tātou e. Pai atu ngā rangatanga, me te aroha i ngā iwi, kia patahi, kia potahi rā, tātou e. Tātou e. Ia wehi. Yeah, I'm going to ask him a question now.
That was beautiful. Can we have your question, please?
Kia ora koutou. Do you, as representatives of the Crown and as a means of honouring te tiriti, commit to centering tikanga Māori through legislative, policy and practice frameworks, thereby ensuring, I mean throughout the whole system, but in this particular case, MSD will, no matter people's relationship status, enable equitable access to decent income support? Kia ora.
Kia ora. Jeff Simmons.
Aye, yes. You just said it so beautifully. All of those issues. Our benefit system is based on a 20th century, I'm going to get struck down for saying this, but WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant view of relationships, which just does not exist in the 21st century diverse New Zealand, Aotearoa New Zealand that we live in today. And this is just one example of how our benefit system tracks people in poverty, because whenever people try to improve themselves and get out of it, they lose the benefit. Those benefit clawbacks, which are so punitive, trap people in poverty. And that's why we want a universal basic income, so that people have that basic level of security no matter how they choose to live their lives. No matter how much you work, no matter how many people you live with, no matter who you live with, no matter where you live, you have that basic level of security.
Oh, and you're out.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Andrew Little of Labour.
Yes, and the work has started on trying to remove the more punitive rules around the benefit system. As I say, the work has started. There is a lot more to go. This government has reinstated the training incentive allowance. That also can be more helpful to someone in your circumstances. But the other thing that's also important, and I put my kind of treaty negotiations hat on here, is the number of accords that are being done, particularly with iwi, as MSD builds relationships with iwi to harness the mātauranga and the support of iwi to actually understand what's going on. So I particularly engaged with Te Huku Accord up far north. That is starting to pay real dividends in terms of a better understanding and better approaches to provide income support, particularly to Māori.
Relationship rules, yes or no?
Relationship rules.
The question was about relationship rules.
Can you just remind us exactly of your question?
It's actually multifaceted, but do you, as representatives of the Crown and as a means of honouring te tiriti, commit to centering tikanga Māori through legislative, policy and practice frameworks, which will thereby ensure MSD will, no matter people's relationship status, enable equitable access to decent income support?
Yes, and my answer was yes, and I said the punitive rules around benefits, including around relationships and including around, for example, solo mothers not declaring who the fathers of their children are. We are starting to change those rules. We have more to go. There is more to do. There's a lot more to do, but that work has started.
Kia ora, thank you. Taylor O'Neill of New Zealand First.
This is very difficult for me to answer.
Yes or no?
No, because tinaka means different things to different people. And what we need to do is we need to have a system that enables...
Sorry, can you just clarify? I'm not sure we heard you right.
What was it that means different things to different people? Sorry?
Tikanga, my apologies for my mispronunciation. Yeah, it means different things to different people, and what we need to have is a system that enables everybody to get into decent, affordable housing, into proper education, and into a world-class healthcare system. We need to ensure that the system is fair for everybody, and in doing that, we need to ensure that people are able to get proper support when they need it.
Okay, I was going to say...
Sorry, when you say tikanga means different things to different people, what do you mean by that?
I can, well, personally, I've asked many different people what it means, many of whom are Maori, or all of them are Maori, and I've received a different answer every single time.
Has there been a familiar theme with your tikanga answers that you've received?
No.
Can I ask though, so would you keep the current relationship rules in place or would you change them? Relationships and benefits? Yes or no?
No, because the moment that you do change them, it can very easily result in people not getting the support that they need, and it can very easily result in people receiving less than they currently do.
Okay, Nicola Willis of National.
No, we believe that income support should be tested, eligibility for income support should be tested against family and relationship circumstances. And that comes from our principled position that families should be the first line of support and defence, the first line of welfare. We want to encourage families and relationships, people in relationships with each other, to support each other in times of need. And fundamentally, our social development policies are about strengthening families. That's why we partnered with the Māori Party to pioneer whānau ora. It's why we, in our policies this year, will be investing heavily in the first 1,000 days of a child's life and supporting parents there. And why we believe in agency, that is, individuals and families being able to work towards independence from the state rather than dependence on the state. And I would like to thank you for sharing your story. Kia ora.
Can I just touch on that? The first part of the question was in honouring Te Tiriti, centering tikanga Māori through legislation, policy and practices. Was your answer no to that or no to the relationship rules?
No to the relationship rules.
Were you able to answer the first part?
What about tikanga Māori? Tikanga
Māori in systems, given the partnership, treaty partnership?
The way the question is phrased, you're saying that the relationship rules are different from tikanga.
Well, I guess just break it down. Would you embed
I'm sorry,
Māori
but I got to ask
across...
yes/no answers to the questions, and I've given you a really clear answer. It was no.
Okay, so no, but also
the answer is no.
Okay, and just to be clear, no to tikanga Māori being embedded across the system.
Well, should tikanga Māori be part of MSD's approach? Yes.
Should tikanga Māori be part of the whole government's wide approach?
Tikanga Māori, absolutely. We should be embracing tikanga Māori.
So that is a commitment.
Waitangi implores us to do so, but I don't accept that that means that we should test eligibility for income support, shouldn't test it against family circumstances. I believe that we can honour tikanga while also testing income support against family circumstances.
I guess my point is if you centre tikanga into policy legislation, the rest will fall for itself. Because of tikanga is values-based, not rules-based, as it is currently.
Thank you for making your point.
And just hang on to that for me. And if we can go to Ricardo Menendez-March on the screen.
Got it.
We can see you now.
Perfect. So it's a yes to both parts of the question. I think starting with embedding tikanga Māori, one of the things in my day-to-day work that I see is things like work and income not recognizing that an unveiling is part of, for example, the funerary process for many Māori communities. And I do see the Crown honouring Te Tiriti is changing the legislative framework to ensure that tikanga is honoured at every step of the way. Additionally, our guaranteed minimum income with individualised income support and would ensure that it's based not on what MSD considers someone to be in a relationship with, but rather just on the fact that people deserve a life with dignity, independent of their relationships to one another. I'm surprised to hear that the Labour Party has plans to address these relationship rules, and I look forward to seeing the detail. But the best way, in my view, to implement an individualized and supportive framework is to party vote green and put a poverty action plan in place.
I think we just caught the end. You froze, but we caught your words, so that's good. Thank you very much, Ricardo.
All good.
Kia ora. Thank you very much.
Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora. That was Alison Brooke from Whānau. Question number 4, which is actually our last question. And Zoe, welcome. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou everyone. My name's Zoe and I am a renter in Wellington, and I've been renting here for 4 years. In 2017, I moved into an 8-bedroom flat in central Wellington. 9 of us lived there in order to make it affordable, and we shared the rent of $1,600 per week. My rent for could be charitably called a shoebox room, was $205 a week, which was more than half my income at the time. The high rent was stressful on everyone in my flat, and we all worked one or multiple jobs on top of our study to afford the rent. I was in charge of the flat rent account, and it wasn't an uncommon occurrence that me and my flatmates often needed to cover for other flatmates because of the inability to pay rent on time. However, we did always pay the landlord on time. However, even paying all this money, we did not get a warm, dry home. In our first winter in the flat, I began to notice black mold on my ceiling. When I alerted the property manager to this, essentially she told me that I would need to clean it off or I would be charged. A month later, the roof in my room began to leak and then pour, which was in the middle of my university exams. I also study law at Victoria University, and I had to move all my furniture into our hallway and sleep in a room that was filling up with buckets and buckets and buckets of rusty water. It took the property manager 1 whole month to fix this roof. She never replaced those wet ceilings. She simply scraped back the top layer where mushrooms had begun to grow. Even for all this disruption to health risk, we were offered $200 of compensation, which, as I said, didn't actually even cover 1 week of my rent, which we managed to negotiate up to 1 week of the flat's rent. Even while all these problems went on, the property manager still hiked our rent year after year. In 2018, it was put up 6% to $1,700 per week. In 2019, it was raised again 6%, another $100 up to $1,800. And even though these numbers are large, it's actually below the average rent increase for Wellington. In that year, we ended up having 11 flatmates to make the rent affordable. And in February of this year, we were told that the rent was being put up $200 per week again to $2,000 a week now. This was a 25% increase in 2.5 years. Obviously, we moved out because it was unaffordable. And over that same period, my income, same as my flatmates, had barely gone up. This experience makes me despair for other people who rent. If rents keep rising faster than income, how are we going to survive? How are renters going to make a living and live a prosperous life? Renters will fall into poverty, and we don't even get warm, dry homes for this money that we pay. The idea of renters thriving or saving for home ownership seems like an impossible dream. To fix this crisis, yes, New Zealand must build more houses. I think that's well known at this point, but that will take time, and renters need action now. So my question to you is, until the rental housing supply catches up with the demand, does your party support introducing rent caps to limit the amount by which landlords can raise rent?
Thank you, Zoe. Kia ora. I'm going to start with Ricardo. So hopefully we can see.
Kia ora, hopefully you can see and hear me fine.
The green on the screen. Wonderful. Thank
Awesome.
you.
So the answer is yes. And the Green Party supports to legislate to ensure secure and affordable long-term rental accommodation. And our definition of rent, of affordable, is that you're not paying more than 30% of your weekly income on rent, right? At the moment, the only way for people to have that guarantee is through income-related rents and public housing. And I do think we need to ensure that landlords are not ripping us off in the middle of a housing crisis. So I think legislation on this is important, but also rapidly expanding and funding kind of order so that we make sure that everybody who's on the social housing waiting list is housed within 5 years, but that we also expand the eligibility so that no one in Aotearoa is paying more than 25 to 30% of a weekly income, because that is absolutely unfair, and too many people here are going without because of high rents.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. National, Nicola, I'll come to you next.
No, but you're absolutely right. We have a massive housing challenge here in Wellington. Since Labor came to power, between when they came to power and March this year, average rents in the city increased $150 a week. And Labor, of course, made simplistic slogans. They were going to do Kiwi Build. They were going to build 100,000 houses. Well, they've built fewer than 500 Kiwi Build houses. That policy failed. The reality is simplistic solutions won't solve our housing problems. We have to increase the supply of housing. That's why we are committing to repealing and replacing the Resource Management Act, which at the moment adds years of delay to those wishing to develop more housing and adds tens of thousands of dollars in cost. We believe that that kind of systemic reform gets to the nub of our housing issue, which comes down to not enough houses to keep up with demand. When we solve that, then rents and house ownership become more affordable.
Thank you, Nicola. Taylor.
No, and that is because you will severely struggle to introduce a fair pricing system to even begin with. For example, you can have a house with 2 bedrooms and a house next door with 2 bedrooms as well. And then there could be a range of different factors involved that determines how much rent is being paid. And then you're going to have landlords and property developers and tenants arguing for weeks on end in the tribunals about the fair price that needs to be the rent. Now, in saying all of that, the next government needs to do 3 things: build, build, build. We need to get more state homes. We need to have more property developments with homes of varying sizes in different locations so that all Kiwis can have access to affordable housing. We need to stop dreaming about having the affordable quarter-acre block while we're having homes for rent that are cold, damp, mouldy, and drafty.
Very much, Taylor O'Neill of New Zealand First. Andrew Little of Labour.
The answer to the question is no, but this government has done a number of things. We've regulated what landlords can and cannot do, or should or need to do in terms of the quality of the housing, and many of those things are starting to kick in and will continue to kick in next year. We've also built 8,000 more public and transitional houses. We inherited a housing crisis, 40,000 plus New Zealanders homeless as a result of the last government, who got rid of state housing, reduced the state housing stock. We've added to it. But there's more to do, and Kiwi Build hasn't been the success we would hoped it might be, but we have built houses that are more affordable for more people, and we need to continue through things like progressive home ownership schemes and what have you, and we will continue to do that. Housing remains a major challenge for us. We proved during COVID-19 with some interventions, stopping evictions for a period of time.
Oh,
and putting more
you're out of time. I'm sorry, you're out of time. Thank you very much, Andrew Little of Labour. Jeff Simmons of TOP.
Hi, yes. Housing is the biggest issue facing New Zealand. It's the #1 driver of poverty over the last 30 years. We've had house prices and rents growing faster than incomes for 30 years. And to solve this problem, we need to hold house prices and rents stable for another generation to allow incomes to catch up. So this is a massive, massive challenge. And the way it is going to take lots of different actions to do that. Labour and National seem to agree on RMA reform, which is a great start, but we need a lot more than that. Yes, we need to build state houses. We need to get the community housing sector involved as well. But we also need to fund local authorities so that they can actually build the infrastructure needed for new houses. TOP is the only party talking about that. We're also the only party talking about taxing property, which gives an incentive to actually build, because vacant properties would be taxed. So there's a real incentive to actually get on and build and to rent out empty homes.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you think you got answers?
Got answers. They weren't the ones I wanted necessarily, but you know.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Kia ora. Now, In the room and indeed online, you've heard quite a lot. You maybe think you've made your mind up at this stage, having heard what the candidates have had to say. But they get to say a bit more. They get to do a 2-minute pitch now. Anything that we haven't covered off, anything they think that they want you to know. Would you like to sit or would you like to come up to the lectern for this bit? Stay sitting?
Yeah.
You can
I might just stand.
Oh, okay. You've got the mic, so you can start. Jeff Simmons of Top, you've got 2 minutes where you get to say how your party would deliver a fair and thriving Aotearoa.
Great. So there is a lot of work to do in New Zealand. So Top believes that everyone should have the opportunity to reach their potential. And I think most politicians agree with that, but we need real change for that actually to be the case. Because like I said, we have, crushing housing costs. We have the most unaffordable housing costs in the Western world. That is, that is putting a massive strain on our younger generations. It's a massive wealth transfer from young to old. And housing is also the #1 driver of poverty. And that's causing all sorts of problems, child uplifts, high imprisonment rates, problems in our education system. A whole lot of that comes back to our unaffordable housing, because that is the thing that New Zealand really stands out on, and having the most unaffordable housing in the world. So fixing housing will sort out a lot of our problems and will give people the opportunity to reach their potential. But we also do need to reform our benefit system, as I've already talked about, a universal basic income of $250 a week. And the important thing with this is that it encourages effort and stops penalising people for choosing how they want to live. Currently, our benefit system, when you are trying to move off the benefit system, often in between tax rates and losing your benefit, you're working for between $0, $3 or $4 an hour. Who would get out of bed, make their lunch, catch a bus to work for $2 or $3 an hour? Most people wouldn't, but we expect beneficiaries to do that. And
Thank you very much.
Oh, that's
2
2
minutes.
minutes.
Goes quickly, eh? Thank you very much, Jeff Simmons of Top there. Andrew Little of the Labour Party, how would you deliver a fair and thriving Aotearoa?
Tonight we've centred a lot on income support, and that's absolutely vital. What we do with our welfare system is going to be very important for those, for example, who cannot work, not because they choose not to work, but they cannot work. They're entitled to live with dignity, and we have to change the rules to make sure that we are doing more in improving the income support that we provide. But inequality has a number of other kind of origins as well. What we do in education is important. Funding education properly, funding our teachers and building and restoring that profession is very important. What we do in early childhood education, giving young kids, the youngest kids, the best start in life. What we do in health. If COVID-19 has shown us anything, it's that actually we need the best possible health system that we can possibly get to respond to the health needs that we have. The one thing that is very important to me, very dear to my heart because of where I come from, and that is incomes, earned incomes. What we do in terms of wages. So we've made the commitment about the living wage. No one should be on a wage that means that they cannot live in dignity and afford those basics. But what we do for people in all walks of life and all sorts of jobs, getting them access to the means to get fair pay through things like fair pay agreements is absolutely vital. We've spent 30 years running down incomes in New Zealand, and we need to change that. We need to change the rules and give workers a better chance through representation to engage with employers so that they get a fair reward for the work that they do. And we can't just keep relying on the argument that we hear from some that let's just raise productivity and we can raise incomes. We've had 30 years of that. Productivity has improved, but wages haven't. Those are the ways, those are the means through which we will address the growing inequality in New Zealand.
Thank you very much, Andrew Little of Labour. Now from New Zealand First, Taylor Arneil.
Very quickly, thank you everybody for coming out tonight, especially under level 2 of COVID-19, and thank you everyone for tuning in online. The issues that we are facing as a nation wide-ranging, and in the last 3 years, New Zealand First, with Labour and with the Greens, we have done a massive amount of work. We've moved thousands of children out of poverty. We have built 8,000 state homes. We have turned around and told landlords and property developers, no, you cannot discriminate your tenants based on their spending habits. You can't do that. Now, we need to ensure that our tax system is enforced. We need to ensure that tax evasion is zero, that people who can pay tax are paying it and they're not evading it, because at the end of the day, they want to see 8 digits in their bank rather than 7. We need to ensure that people who fall on hard times get help, that they get the assistance that they need to live a decent life, but that they are not left to just linger under the welfare state, that they have the opportunity to move up into decent paying jobs that they will want to be able to get out of bed to go to, jobs that they want to be able to say to their partners or to their families, I'm off to work, I'll see you later, I love this. We need to ensure that we can deliver on all of that, and we need to build. We need to build homes, we need to build state homes, and the issues that we are facing, it's going to take more than 3 years to do. So at the end of the day, you have parties up here who are making wild promises. You have parties up here, they were in charge for 9 years, and when I moved down here, they told me that the issue was a flag. Party vote New Zealand First, and we can ensure that we start to fix these issues and we continue to fix them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Taylor. Nicola Willis of National, the floor is yours.
Kia ora koutou katoa. We are, as a country, looking at a very hard few years ahead. If we go back to that pavlova at the beginning of tonight, that pavlova is set to shrink by 16%, according to the Treasury. And that means thousands of people are going to lose their jobs. Thousands more children are going to be growing up in material hardship. There are going to be fewer opportunities and lower incomes. For the first time in decades, we've seen a reduction in median family incomes. Now, National's approach to this set of challenges is very much that we have to focus on growing our economy, because that is the key to creating jobs and opportunities for all of us. And we stand proudly on our record. Jacinda Ardern came into government saying that she would reduce child poverty, that it was a driving mission for her. Well, the number of children growing up in material hardship in this country has increased by 11,000 on her watch. National proudly lifted 60,000 children from benefit-dependent households, and we stand on that record. Jacinda Ardern, she had said she'd solve homelessness. Well, there are 3 times as many people on the State House waiting list today as there were when Labour came into government. So National will not tax people more. We will back people to get ahead. We will reward people who work hard for their achievement. We will ensure that there are more opportunities for all people, and we will not be cutting benefits. We will increase investment in education to provide equality of opportunity. We will invest in strengthening families and in the first 1,000 days of every child's life. We will do the things that ensure this can be a prouder nation, and it can be a nation where we don't shrink that pavlova by 16%. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Nicola. Just hang on to that for a sec. I think we're going to hand over to Action Station shortly, but before then, Ricardo Menendez-March, we can see you on the screen again. You have 2 minutes. What would your party do to deliver a fair and thriving Aotearoa?
Kia ora koutou. So I want to start by busting this myth that the pavlova is simply shrinking. The problem is also that more of the pavlova is actually continuing to go to the wealthy few, and in fact, that gap continues to grow at the expense of the rest of us. And while politicians keep telling us that we have to wait decades for livable incomes, housing for all, and quality public services, they are wrong. It actually takes courage and political will, as well as a plan to tackle these issues. And the Green Party has a bold plan to introduce a guaranteed minimum income, housing for all, fair pay agreements so that everyone has a dignified life independent of their employment status. I think the response to COVID-19 has shown us that government can act quickly and boldly to address some of these issues. For example, we introduced the income relief payment, which should be a framework of what our welfare system should look like. Not only is it double of the job seeker benefit rate, it was individualized. So we know these things are absolutely possible. And the Green Party knows But we cannot afford to just tinker around the edges, and we need to act boldly to implement permanent reforms to our welfare and housing system. With Labour ruling out immediate further increases to benefit levels just this weekend, the Greens are needed more than ever at the table. With a stronger Green Party vote and a mandate to take these issues to government, we can implement all of these plans and ensure that we end poverty in Aotearoa. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Ricardo. Now, just before I hand over to Action Station briefly, a quick recap on the questions and the answers. So question number 1 was, do you support making sure New Zealand's wealthiest individuals start contributing more through a wealth tax? That was the Pavlova. So the answers were, let me have a look. It was Labour and Green and Top said yes to that, and National and New Zealand First said no. The second question was, do you support an increase in core benefit rates? Yes was from Labour and Green. New Zealand First Top said no, and National also said no. Number 3, do you commit to centering tikanga through legislative and policy frameworks, and therefore ensuring MSD will, no matter people's relationship status, enable equitable access to decent income support? The yes answers came from Labour, Green and Top, and the no's came from National and New Zealand First. And the final question, number 4, on housing. Until rental supply catches up with demand, does your party support introducing rent caps to limit the amount by which landlords can raise rent? Yes from Green and Top, no from Labour, National and New Zealand First. So that's how it all fell. I think it is time to hand over to Action Station regarding some audience polling. I think.
Hi, yes.
Kia ora.
Thank you. Kia ora. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us tonight. And to Susie for your amazing hosting, and to all the politicians and the question answers for sharing your thoughts with us. So if you are on Zoom, you will be able to see a poll that's just been launched, and you can let us know which of these parties most impressed you with their answers tonight. And just my apologies that the Māori party is still in there. Unfortunately, they weren't able to come. Cool, the voting is already happening. Great. And on Facebook, there'll also be a poll linked in the thread that you'll be able to vote on as well. So we'll just take a few minutes to let everyone vote, and then we will be back with you with the results. Thank you.
Kia ora. So can we come back to you, Ruby, shortly and get a result on that one?
Absolutely. We'll come back to you in 3 minutes' time.
Okay, fantastic. Well, in that case, while we're waiting, what should I do? I know, I'm going to ask you a question, Andrew Little. I know it's not really your area, but the Welfare Working Group came out with, from memory, 47%. Is that 47%, 49%, as being the amount that benefits needed to go up by? So why not implement the recommendation?
Well, we're not going to do that in one fell swoop. There is a cost issue, and there's always competitive.
Oh, sorry, you should get the microphone.
Sorry, my apologies for that. So the question is, why not increase by 47%, which is what the recommended amount was from the Welfare Expert Advisory Group. We could not do that in one fell swoop.
Why not?
Because it is expensive and there are competing priorities.
Like what?
Everything else that the government does. So that's why a start has been made. We made the $25 a week increase this year. And in subsequent years, we will look to continue to increase that. But yeah, that gets negotiated every year with around the cabinet. We do need to increase benefit levels. They were artificially cut back in the early 90s, and it's only now that we're starting to address that issue.
Okay, if you could hand the microphone to Nicola, that would be really great. If National gets into power, would you implement a 47% hike in benefit rates?
No.
Why not?
We simply can't afford that as a country, but it's also very important that those who are in work are rewarded for that work. And if you let the gap between benefit payments and work get too small, then it creates disincentives for people to be in paid work. And fundamentally, we believe that being in paid employment is a good thing, where it's of course possible, and I acknowledge that some people for health reasons can't be in work, but where people can be in work, there are a multitude of studies that show they are happier, their lives are more fulfilled, they have more purpose, and it's better for their family and children too. So work in and of itself, we think, is of value, and we want to ensure our economy incentivises people to be in paid work.
Okay. If you can pass the mic on to Taylor, that would be brilliant. Under New Zealand First Watch, 47% was what the working group came back with. Is that something that you think New Zealand First should have pushed harder at the cabinet table to get across the line?
We pushed for it, we couldn't get it across the line, and we had to accept...
Oh, Andrew's face. Sorry, I don't know if people on Zoom caught that.
That's the answer. It's a simple miselection.
Yeah.
Oh, so New Zealand First pushed for benefits to be increased by 47% around the cabinet table.
Sorry.
You might want to ring Winston before you go any further.
Oh no, I think you should keep going. I want to hear the rest of this answer.
Because I'm not a sitting.
I know you're not an MP.
I don't know what happens around the cabinet table.
I can tell you.
No, I was going to say, I don't think we're allowed to go down this road, although that would be amazing, but not now.
As I said earlier, we accepted the benefit increases that the government put forward.
Okay, and if you could hand it down to Jeff Simmons from top, would you implement that rise?
No, the higher you raise benefits, the bigger the poverty trap becomes. So that's what we're trying to overcome with the universal basic income, so that you're rewarded for moving into work. So the real winners from a universal basic income are the working poor, and we have 40% of people, of children in poverty, are in households that are working, and they would really benefit from a universal basic income.
Okay, so a different approach coming from you. Ricardo, I don't know if you are still with us.
I am.
I know the Greens haven't been around the cabinet table this time round. Oh,
I'm still around. Yeah,
we can see you now. And also, you're not an MP, but would the Green Party want to see a 47% hike?
Yeah, look, I may not be an MP, but I work with people on the benefit on a daily basis. And I know that my Green Party colleagues do want to see that hike. I am disappointed to see the squabbling between New Zealand First and Labour, because at the end of the day, neither of them are committed to further increases, immediate increases to benefit levels. It's critical we lift benefit levels. And I think the myth around disincentivizing work is a myth. There's research even that shows that work sanctions do not actually push people to meaningful employment, and that people who are on benefit types that don't have work obligations, when they do go into work, they tend to stay in work longer and they find more satisfaction in their employment. So overhauling the welfare system as well as increasing benefits is absolutely critical. And out of the three government parties, there's only one of them that has been consistently clear about the need to increase benefit levels, and that is the Green Party.
I'm just going to pick you up on the idea of top about the universal basic income. That's a very different solution to this kind of binary argument that we have around work or benefits. Is that something that you would support? You would want to see something like that as part of the mix?
So I just want to make it clear that what TOP is proposing is a universal basic income that is literally below the poverty line. And I think that is out of touch with the lived realities that people on the benefit face. I work with people on the benefit on a daily basis, and I know that a UBI of 250 would simply not cut it. The difference is that the guaranteed minimum income proposes supplementary assistance that would ensure that people are actually would live with dignified incomes. And we're also focusing on providing enough public housing so that none of these people are paying more than 30% of their weekly income on rent.
Okay, I'm going to come back to, Andrew Little, who's got the microphone, brilliant. Do you think UBI is kind of an interesting policy and it might be one to steal?
It's definitely an interesting policy. When we were in opposition, when we talked about the future of work and had a big 2-day seminar about it, it was an issue that came up. It was looking for a model that works, and we know that jurisdictions, not necessarily nation-state jurisdictions, but provinces and areas around the world have tried it and haven't found a model that works yet. It's not a reason to stop trying, but in principle, it is well worth striving for and looking for a way to make it work. It does have an impact on tax distribution as well, where tax falls in order to generate that basic income, and it does require an extensive public debate to get the social license to move towards it.
Okay, I think maybe come to Nicola, hand the microphone up to her. UBI, what do you reckon?
Well, as I said earlier, fundamentally, philosophically, we want to see people earning, learning, or caring for others. So the problem with the UBI, I think, is that it takes from the state its obligation to actually ensure that people have opportunities to contribute. If you're saying you'll get an income no matter what, then what you're not saying is, but we feel an obligation to create an economy and society in which people have the opportunity to have paid work, in which people can care for their families, in which people can be educated. All it does is provide an income, and life is more than that.
Okay. If you could hand the microphone down to Taylor, and what's New Zealand First's take on the UBI? Is that something that could be a useful tool in the toolbox on this?
Well, a few months ago at the party convention, Minister Tracy Martin announced that we are wanting to bring back the universal family benefit. So that is a UBI, but not quite to everybody. It's to people who have families. Why? Because that was something that New Zealand had up until the 1990s, when it was abolished under Ruth Richardson and the mother of all budgets. And one of the biggest things that occurred after it was abolished is child poverty increased. That was one of the immediate effects of it. And another thing as well is that the families that had the universal family benefit, they found that they were able to spend just a little bit more money at the end of the week, or actually let their kids go to sporting competitions, buy them brand new gear, and also assist in the paying off of their first homes. So a universal family benefit is something that we're looking at bringing back. Minister Tracy Martin announced it, but a universal benefit, well, I know for a fact that my landlord or that other landlords around this country will just immediately hike up the rent.
Okay, I think I'm going to give a last word on this to Jeff Simmons of TOP. $250 a week, universal basic income, but it's below the poverty lines. It's a bit rough, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it would need to be topped up for people that can't work, but we do know that when it has been trialled overseas, that people are more likely to work, they are more likely to retrain, they are more likely to start businesses because they're not stuck in that welfare trap. They're not continuously being pulled down by benefit callbacks. Yeah, so they're more likely to move into the labour market. And if, this is a big if, but if all of the benefits that we see in overseas trials from people being more likely to work and retrain, if all those come through, then actually that's worth about another 8 to 10 billion, which means you could have a UBI of $325 a week. Now, we're an evidence-based party, so we're not going to go promising a UBI of $325 a week, but it's possible if based on the evidence from those trials.
But I mean, it's a fair point to make that it might just end up going onto your landlord's pocket.
That's why we need to fix housing as well. I mean, absolutely, I take that point. We've got a massive job to do to fix the housing market.
Okay, thank you very much, all of you. I'm going to go back to Ruby at Action Station, who may have some results for us. Maybe.
I do. I do.
Hang on a sec, Ruby, we can't see you yet. You're big on the screen, but your camera, maybe your video's maybe not on. Yay!
Sorry, I am calling in. Hi. So our final results are in. This is from across Zoom and Facebook. So of the over 200 people watching, 105 people have voted. Ironically, kind of like real voting. But what we have tonight is the Greens. Ricardo took it away with 66%. TOP came in second with 20% support. Labour next with 11.4% support, and New Zealand First with 1.9%. And no one chose National.
I'm so glad I did. Anyway, I got to hear the great stories, and that was actually really useful. So even if no one voted for me, I vote for the four. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Thank you very much, Ruby from Action Station, for that. So just to recap those, Green 66, Top 20, Labour 11.4, New Zealand First 1.9, and big sad face for Nicola, sorry.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, kia ora, thank you very much to all of tonight's question askers, to Leilani, Stacey, Alison and Zoe. Thank you very much for telling us your stories in such a public way. Thank you to the political representatives, all of them, on the screen and in person here. We hope that tonight's event has made you think and will help make you decide who to vote for. And do vote, but don't, you know, do actually go out and vote, I would say. Huh? Oh, you've got to, well, you can enroll on at the time as well, though, can't you?
Yeah, you can enroll early and you can enroll and vote on the day, but in the advance voting period and on election day. But the main thing is, in order to vote, you have to enroll. So if you haven't enrolled, even though the rolls are closed last Sunday, you can still enroll, and even during the advance voting period and on election day now, you can enroll and cast a vote.
So vote early, vote often. Excellent.
Vote early, don't vote often, just vote once. And you have a number of ballots to cast because you've got the referendum questions as well.
Oh, that's true. There's more boxes to tick this time round. We haven't even scratched the surface there. Oh my goodness. So thank you very much to all of you for helping us all, hopefully, decide who we are going to vote for. And also, maybe take some of the stories and some of the kōrero back to your teams for further discussion, eh? So before we end, I've been asked to let you know tomorrow Tick for Kids is releasing its scorecards. They've surveyed each political party on 4 measures for children and young people. It's organised in themes of health and mental health, and education, environment, income and welfare, inclusivity and connection, and also housing. Of course, that came up a lot. You can also keep an eye on the Equality Network's analysis of each political party's policies to address wealth and income equality. That's coming next week. That is it for us. That's all for now. That's all, folks. Ka kite anō.